Everybody, this is Tom Marshall and Paramus. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We're about to start a brand new year and it's going to be a great one. Over the last few years, as you know, there are many things that were very different about school. And there were practices that we had and structures that we had in place that we kind of had to change because the world told us we had to change them. And now that we're back, we are going to today take a look at some of those practices and some of those things that we know to be true about teaching and learning and kind of think, how are we going to make those things work again? How are we going to bring them back into our teaching? And how are we possibly even going to make them better now that we've been through a pandemic? All right, so let's take a look and see what that looks like. So before we start, let's play Name That Educational Philosopher. Here we go. Do you know who this is? I bet you do. That's right. It's Brian Camborne. Brian Camborne is the author of something called The Conditions of Learning Theory in 1988. Brian Camborne wrote this. He is from New Zealand. And in this writing, he talks about all the different things that have to be in place for people to learn. Okay. And he names a bunch of different conditions that we can make happen in our classrooms. And they happen in different ways. Um, Sometimes we think of different programs that we have and different philosophies and different methodologies that we have as teachers, and a lot of them are rooted in Camborne's work. Okay, so let's take a look and see what some of these conditions are. Let's play Name That Condition now. The letters are all jumbled. Do you think you know what this might be? That's right, it's immersion. Immersion is the idea that we surround kids, we immerse them in the things that they need to learn. So that means we do things like we put a print rich environment into place. We create an environment where kids are able to take risks and ask questions. We immerse them in language or music or art or whatever it is that we're hoping that they'll take into themselves. All right, we do that by reading them beautiful texts. We do that by giving them lots of opportunities to try things. Okay, there's so many ways that we immerse our students, um, and so we can do that a lot now, right? And we weren't able to share texts and we weren't able to share materials over the last few years, but now we can, right? But think of all the different ways that you can now possibly immerse other things into your classroom. Okay, so think about that. What are the things that you're going to surround your students with this year to make them be successful? Let's play another one. Name that condition. Here we go. Do you know what that is? That's right. It's demonstration. Demonstration is the idea that, well, how can someone do something that they haven't been shown how to do, right? So we do a lot of demonstration when we have mini lessons in reading and writing workshop. We use demonstrations in conferring. We use demonstrations in science. We use demonstrations anytime we're teaching someone how to do something. Okay, and so we've had to shorten demonstrations over the last few years, and there's different things that we've had to do differently. Okay, but now it's time for us to really get good at demonstrating again and make that part of our daily practice several times a day. Because the single best way that we can have someone learn how to do something is to really show them just how to do it. And maybe now we can be a little more conscious about the way we tuck in the things that kind of go on in our minds when we're doing what we're doing. Okay? Telling kids what we're doing while we're doing it, telling them what to be mindful of when they're doing it. Okay? That's the art of demonstration. Let's go on. Next condition. Any idea? That's right, it's engagement. Engagement is the idea that you are really into what you're doing, okay? That you are not just doing it and going through the motions and doing it because someone told you to do it, but you're getting some enjoyment out of it, okay? There is a level that's even higher than engagement, which is empowerment, where students get so involved in an activity that they're now extending that activity. They're um, helping others to do that activity. They are inventing new aspects of that activity. And engagement and empowerment are something that are true for us too. Okay. So, one of the things that creates engagement is skill and time to do that, right? And so, think about all the different ways that you're going to engage your students and yourself this year. Let's go on. In that condition, here we go. Expectation. Now, expectation can sound like a really negative kind of word. Accountability. You have to do this because now I taught you. But if you kind of do it the way that Catherine Bomer talks about it in the book, The Teacher You Want to Be, don't think of it as expectation, which can sound negative, but think of it as expectancy. Expectancy. Like, I expect that you are going to be great at this. I know that you can. I believe in you. You're ready for this. Okay, so once you've taught something, you should kind of have an air of expectancy around you, okay? Um, and sort of remind students that you believe that they are able to do this, okay? And we do this kind of in everything that we teach. If we don't, then we're kind of holding our kids back. Let's move on. Name that condition. Any thoughts? Responsibility. We learn about responsibility from our friend Spider Man, right? Um, responsibility means that we help kids know that they own what they've learned and that they can use it and they can use it well. Um, so think about all the ways that you promote responsibility in your class. Think about, and I'm not just talking about like a procedural responsibility, but about academic responsibility. And that sounds really serious. But it's like, well, I just taught you how to, we studied the spelling pattern and you're responsible for using that well now. You're responsible for always doing your best, and you can do it. I know you can. Okay, so that's an important part of conditions of learning and student-driven instruction. Name that condition. Any thoughts? Approximation. That's right. We know as teachers that when kids are first trying something, when they're first learning something, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look the way that we would do it. And we have to understand that there are tiny little micro steps that kids have to take in order to get there. And so it's up to us to recognize those and celebrate those and help kids get from one step to the next. Um, so think about that. Think about that's true in our practice too, right? Just because we went to one workshop on a certain thing doesn't mean we're like now experts at it. We're always trying to work a little bit harder and get a little bit better at it. And that's what approximation is all about. Okay. We see that in our elementary classrooms a whole lot, don't we? So think about that. How are you building in structures that support approximation in your class, right? Every time that you refer to a word wall and you provide support, every time that you provide support in other ways, you're supporting approximation and making that happen. Okay. Every time you give kids independence to try something out, knowing that they're not going to do it as well as you would, or as well as your students last year would at the end of the year, you're supporting approximation, and that's important. Last one. Oh, not the last one. Application, right? How are kids ever going to get better at something if we don't give them time to practice, right? Application is really important. It's the old argument about spelling tests or math facts. It's not enough for kids to just memorize them. They have to use them in order for it to really sink in to their long-term memory. Okay, so are you giving kids lots of time to read and lots of time to write and lots of time to practice their math and lots of time to practice social skills? Application is such a key thing because if you don't give kids time to apply what they've learned, they're going to forget it very soon. All right? Name that condition. This is the last one. Feedback. Feedback is something that we typically do at the end of the learning process. We say back to kids what we think they did well, we respond to it, we celebrate it, but we can do that sort of in the middle, right? We don't have to wait until the end of the process for them to get feedback. to learn what they're doing well and what their best next steps would be, right? So think about that. Think about how you can make feedback happen all the time, how you can make feedback more general so that it can apply to lots of situations. There's many ways that very experienced teachers can learn about how to offer really meaningful feedback better and better even now. So those were some of the conditions of learning that Camborne wrote about back in 1988. But now what? Now what? Let's think about us this year as we head back into this September and many Septembers to come. Let's think about these questions. What aspects of your teaching from before the pandemic will you reclaim? What's something that you gave up on because it simply didn't work virtually or because we had to keep distance and not touch stuff? Okay? What aspects of your teaching are you going to get back? How will you deepen one or some of these conditions in your daily life as a teacher? What are you going to do if you're an experienced teacher and you know all about these things? What are you going to do to grow your thinking and grow your practice around any of these conditions? Which of these conditions will you work extra hard to foster this year? Which one is going to be your major? What are you majoring in this year? What's something that you are going to make a conscious effort to pay close attention to as you get back to work this year? And finally, who might be a good partner for you in this important work? Because we don't learn in silos. We really learn best when we work together with others. So think of a colleague across the hall, across your district, or across the nation, someone that you can spend time communicating with about this. It's going to lift the level of your practice and that teacher's practice, and it's going to ultimately help lots and lots of kids. So that's it. Happy New Year. Why don't we all do that? Why don't we all reground our practice? Why don't we all reclaim all the things that we may have lost for a little while over the last few years and take them back? And don't just take them back and do them the way you did a few years ago. Use this opportunity to grow. That's what every good teacher does. Happy New Year.